So in this video, we are going to learn about other systems. We've talked about base 10. Now we're going to talk about other bases. One thing I want to remind you, when you learn by video, please take time, if you are confused, to please stop the video, pause it, rewind it, and re-look at something. Okay, if you need to hear it again, that's the great thing about learning via video instead of in class. You can rewind it and hear me say it as many times as you need. Also, I can never go too fast because you can slow me down, right? Or if I'm boring, you just speed it up, okay, as long as you get the material. Okay, the other thing I want to remind you of, remember I said that there's going to be embedded videos within the video. So in other words, between the last um, uh, video and this video, there is a link, a YouTube link. Okay, so you need to watch this YouTube link to learn about the best math teaching strategies. Okay, so this is made by a K2 math interventionist. Okay, so she is someone who goes into classrooms to help kindergarten through second grade teachers teach math better. Okay, so this is one of her favorite strategies. This is what you're going to see me doing all the time. When I talked about going from concrete to abstract, that's what she talks about. So you will need to fill this in, watch that video and fill this in. And I'm going to check these when you take your chapter 1 test. Chapter 3 test. While you're taking the test, I'll be looking through your notes and giving you a notes grade. Okay. So now we're going to talk about other systems. So I'm going to forewarn you, it's wonky. It's going to be weird at first. So the first time you see me do this, you're going to be a little confused. That's okay. I've got lots of examples. Okay. And then I've made extra videos for practice if you need it. And we'll talk about that at the end. But anyway, okay, let's get started. So let's talk about base 5. Base 5 was made by Kenya, folks from Kenya, okay, called the base 5 system because instead of ours is base 10. So look at your two hands, you got 10 fingers. Okay, in Kenya they said we don't need 10 fingers, let's just use one hand. Okay, so theirs is a base 5 system. So it's not a 5-hand system. We're not using 5 hands. That you could 5 hands, that would be base 25. So I guess we could do base 25, but this is a 1-hand system, not a 2-hand system. Okay, so I want to show you what it looks like. Okay, so you've got, here is your 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger, 4 finger. That's just like our base 5. But now you've got 1 hand and 0 fingers. Notice what this looks like. So 10 in base 5 is actually 1 hand and that should be, 1 hand and no fingers. Okay, so that should be, it's like you have 5. Okay, so 1 hand and 1 finger, that's going to be, we would call it 6, but it is 11 in base 5. Again, if this is confusing, I'm expecting it to be at first. Okay, I just want you to see these symbols. Notice they don't use all the symbols that base 10 uses. Okay, so these are the numbers. These are the only numbers you can use in base 5. Okay, so in base 5, notice there is not a 5 in base 5. If you look back at our numbers, and we'll go way back up here. Whoops, where am I? Okay, look in our base 10. We are base 10. Whoops, we are base 10. And look at what we have. 0 through 9. We don't have a 10 in base 10. So you're not going to have a 5 in base 5. Okay, so now we're going to play. Okay, I'm going to take out 37 blocks. Okay, And when I do use this in class, we actually take out the 37 blocks. So let me show you what I mean. So I've got 37 little bitty blocks, okay? And we're going to write it in base 10. Now it already is base 10, okay? But I want you to see how we would get those numbers, and then we're going to write it in base 5. Okay, so whenever you write it in base 10, these are your choices. You can have 1 to the 0 power, 1 to the 0 power, which is 1, 10 to the, 10 to the 0 power, 10 to the first power, 10 to the second, 10 to the third. Those are what we're going to be working with. Okay, so we have 37 blocks. So are we going to have something in the 10 to the third block? We don't have 1,000. We don't have 1,000 blocks. So we're not going to use this. Okay. What about 10 to the second? We don't have 100 blocks. We only have 37. So we do not need that. All we need is 10 to the first and 10 to the 0. So we're only going to have two. We're going to have two blanks. Okay. That's it. And our answer is only going to have two blanks. We're going to have units. Here's our units. Oops, I'll write it. Here's our units. And here's our longs or rods, depending on what teacher you talk to. Okay, so we are going to see how many longs we have. A long has 10 in it, right? So here's our long. Ooh, if you were looking at it, it would have 10. I don't know how many I put, but there's going to be 10 units in there. Okay, so I'm going to make this a long. I would take those little blocks and string them up and make a long. Or you could think I'm going to exchange it for a long. Okay, same thing here. There's another set of 10. And here's another set of 10. Do we have any more sets of 10? We don't. So that means I have 3 longs. I could take those 10, those 30, those 30 blocks and make 3 longs out of it. And then how many do I have left? Let's see how many I've got left. I'll do green. And there's my green. If I count those, the green ones, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've got 7 units. So I have the number 37. Of course, that's what we started with because we're in base 10. All right. We're going to take those 37 again. So let me do it again. There's my 37 blocks. But this time we're using base 5. So base 5 means these are the numbers we can use. 1, 5, 25, or 125. It might help. I didn't think to draw this, but the long is going to look like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to have 5 in it. A flat is going to have 5 this way and 5 that way. So you're going to have 25 in it. And then you're going to have a block. And my block is going to have 25 this way, 25 this way, and 25 that way. So 125. Okay? So what we're trying to do is take those 37 and see how we can write that in base 5. Okay, first thing we're going to do is look at this 125. So 125, we only have 37 blocks, so we can't make this guy. We can't make that guy. We don't have enough blocks. Okay, but we have 25. So let's see if we can make a flat. So here, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20, 20. Right here, those 25 I could turn into a flat. So that would make one flat. Oh, I should have mentioned something. Notice when I crossed out that 125, we have 1, 2, 3. We've got 3 places. So I should have, whoops. Well, I'm trying to erase it. There we go. So I'm going to have 3 numbers in my answer. Okay? So I have one flat. So I'm going to go ahead and put my flat. I'm going to put my 1 in there. Okay. So there's my 1. Got 1 flat. Okay. So that's done. Now, um, done that. So now let's look at, well, I'll do red. So now we're going to look at fives. How many fives can I get? I've got 1, 2. I got 2 fives. So that's 2 of these guys. I got 2 of those. I got 1 of these. Got 1 of these. I got 2 of those. So there's my 2. And then my units, I guess I'll do that in, um, oops, sorry. I'll do that in black. So I've got 2 units left. So I've got 2 units. So I did that one. Okay. So my answer, let's see if I've got it right here. I've got, oh, let me redo. Okay. So my answer is going to be, let's see if I did it down here. Yep. 122 base 5. That's the way you write it. 122 and then a little bitty 5 underneath. It could also be written like this. 122 with a little bitty 5. But I tend to like to write that word down there so that people don't get confused, because putting it down low and putting it up high, sometimes it might look, it might like 1,225. So, okay. So that's how you do it. You know what? I'm going to do one. Well, yeah. Okay. So that's how you do it concretely. Okay. Now, abstractly, I'm going to go ahead and go to abstract. But you may have to come back and watch this part over again. Okay. So again, we started off with 37. Okay. So we're going to take this 25 right here. So we knew this one wouldn't work. Okay. So we're going to take the 25 and I'm going to divide 25 into my 37. And I have 1. It went in 1 time. So I put my 1 flat up there. Okay. So, and what did I have left? I had left 12. I had 12 of those guys left, right? So I'm going to do that again. I've got 12 and I've done my 25. I'm already done. Oops, let me get back. So I've already checked off my 25. I've done that. So now I'm going to take the 12 that I had left over. So there's my 12. That's this guy. Okay. That guy right there. I'm going to take 12 and I'm going to divide it by the next one, 5. So I'm going to divide it by my rods. Okay, so I'm going to take 5 into 12, and it goes in there 2 times. That's that right there. So that's my 2 longs. What do I have left? I've got 2 left over. Okay, and so from here, you've got some choices. You could just say, oh, I just have 2 left over. That's my 2 units, and just write 2. Okay, or you could have your students divide 2 by my 1, and it goes in there 2 times, and I got 0 left. So the last step is always going to be divided by 1 unless you have nothing left. Okay. All right. It's okay if that sort of blew your mind. We're going to keep blowing it. We're going to write it in base 2. Now, base 2, who in the world would ever use base 5? Honestly, I'm not sure, but base 2 is used all the time. Okay, base 2 is what I'm making this video on an iPad, and so there's a computer working back there. Okay, so that's the way computers work. They're in base 2, or it's called, oh shoot, ons and offs. I'll think of the binary. It's called binary code. Okay, so anyway. So we're going to do the same thing that we did up here with 10s and here with 5s. We're going to take 2 to the 0 power, 2 to the first, 2 to the second, and we're going to just keep going and figure out what numbers we have to work with. Okay, so that's our first part. So we're going to figure out all those numbers. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, well, which ones don't apply? Well, which ones are not going to be what we're working with? Well, we're not going to work with 64 because 64 doesn't go into 37. We don't have enough blocks. But notice we have 32. So we have 32. So that means I'm going to have 2 to the 5th. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write down 2 to the 5th, 2 to the 4th, 2 to the 3rd, 2 to the 2nd. Okay, notice how I changed. Here I had units, longs, flats. Okay, the reason I changed is this is a, let me point again. This is my units. Here's my longs. Here's my flats. Here's my block. And now we're in trouble because right here, it is no longer concrete, right? Because we don't have a 4th dimension or a 5th dimension, okay? So we could not do base 2 concretely with this. All right, but what you need to know is we're going to have 6 numbers in our answer, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take that 37, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to divide it by 32. Okay, so we're going to do that one first. So I did. So I have 1. Oops, sorry. So I got 1 of my 2 to the 5th. So I'll put my 1 there, and I have how many left over? I've got my 5 left over, right? So I've got this 5 left over. So now I'm going to write down 5. Okay, so there's my 5. And let's go back to this list over here. Okay, so now we're dealing with 5. So we basically start all over. We're dealing with 5. Now, the problem is 16 does not go into 5. Okay, so we're going to have nothing there. 8 does not go into 5, so we're not going to have any there. But 4 does go into 5, so we are going to do that. So 4 goes into 5 one time, so I'm going to put my 1 here. Okay, and I have 1 left over. So I've got my 1, but that is my 1 unit. Okay, and I could have said, let me I could have done this. I could have said, okay, I'm going to have my 1. Oops, I'll put it in maybe green. I could have had 1, and what can I divide it by? Notice I cannot divide it by 2. So I'm going to put another 0 there, and then I've got my 1. That might have made a little more sense to put one more step in there. So one of those, there it is. And I end up with 0. Okay, so my answer is, whoops, sorry. So my answer is what, 10,000, 100,000, 100, anyway, 100,101 base 2. Okay, notice I didn't put commas in there. Okay, you can if you want to, but you don't have to. Okay, that's a little wonky, right? It's okay. I know it's wonky, so we're going to do another one. Okay, we're going to do one more. So now we're going to have the same 37 cubes, and we're going to write it in base 12. Okay, so think of a clock. When you think of base 12, think of a clock. So we're going to have all the numbers up through 12, 0 through 11. The problem is our 10 and our 11, do you notice that this takes up too much? It takes up 2 spots. Okay, so we got to somehow make that just 1 digit. So we're going to make it one sort of a digit. It's a T for 10. So guess what 11 is? 11 is an E. Okay, so instead of having 10 and 11, we'll have T and E. So the numerals, I guess I shouldn't call it numerals, the digits in base 10 is 0 through 9, and then T and E. Okay, I know it's a little wonky. All right, we're dealing with base 12, so the first thing we do is get our list of numbers that we're going to deal with. Okay, now notice we're at 37. So that means that this one isn't going to work. That's too big. That's too big. Okay. So all we have is 2. All we have is 2. So that means my answer is going to have 2 um, 2 digits. Okay. 12 to the 0 and 12 to the first. You could call that You could call that units and a rod if you wanted to, or a long. Anyway, all right. So you're going to take your 37 and you're going to divide it by what number? We're going to divide it by this 12. All right, so we divide it by 12 and we get the number 3. All right, so I'm going to put 3 there and I have 1 left over. And I could do, I think it might be, you could just say, yep, I got 1 unit. Or you could, and again, if you say that and your students are getting all confused, then go ahead and say, okay, we have 1 left over. So we're going to write it here. Okay, oh, and usually, I forgot to do this. Usually I check it off when I'm done. Finish that one. Anyway, so, oh, look, 1 will go into 1. 1 goes into 1 time. So I got a 1 there. So I have 1 unit. So my answer, 37, is written as 31 base 12. So I know that this is wonky and it's going to take some practice. We're going to practice in class, but you may need some more practice. So there's some more videos that you can watch. Okay. Okay. So now we are. I think. Let me stop. Well, let's see. Let me come down here and show you. I think we did some more practice. Let me come down here and do extra practice. While we're talking about it, let me go ahead and do some extra practice. But if you notice, I've got on YouTube, I have an extra practice worksheet. So in your notes, you have an extra practice worksheet, and I have the video to go with it. So this is the part that confuses most people. This is the hardest part, I think, of maybe even this whole chapter. And we're doing it on day 1. I'm sorry. But I think this is probably the hardest part of the whole chapter. So I'm going to keep going. All right. So let's do a little bit more practice and then we'll come back and then we'll make one more video. Okay. So we are going to base 5. Okay. Base 5. So here is my 5 to the 0, 5 to the 1, 5 to the 2. There's all that. Okay. And so it's a little bit in a little different order, but it's 1, 5, 25, and 125. That's what we have to deal with. Okay. So the first one is 456. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take, well, first thing I do is I look, all those numbers are going to work. 125 goes into 456. If I did 5 to the 4th, it's a big honking number. So it's too big. So I know that I'm going to have 4 answer spots. I'm going to start 456 and I'm going to divide it by what? I'm going to divide it by that 125. Okay. So that's my first step. There we go. So I'm going to take my 456 and divide it by 125. Notice I have 3. That gave me 3. So I'm going to write it here. All right. Then I'm going to take my 81 and I'm going to start another division problem. Okay. So my 81, my leftover, my remainder, I do another problem. Oh, and I made it red. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'll go ahead and make this a different color. I'll make it black. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to take 81. This time we already divided by 125. So we did that one. So this time we're going to divide by 25. Okay, and we have 3 there. So I put my 3 in. Notice what I have left over. I've got my 6. So I'm going to do another division problem. Okay, so there, there's my other division problem. So I put the 6 in there. So now we're going to look at the 5. So let's see how many times 5 goes into 6, and it's 1. So I put that in my answer blank. And notice I have 1 at the very end. So again, you could just write 1, or you could do that little bitty division. 1 divided by 1 is 1 if you want to. So my final answer is going to be 3,311 base 5. And notice this time I wrote it with a little 5 down there because I was running out of room. Anyway, okay. I'll do 3 more and then we'll pause this video. Okay, so the next one is 595. Once again, we're going to look at these numbers right here. Okay, now those numbers right there, that's all we're going to use because 5 to the 4th, again, is a big number, 625 or something like that. It's bigger than 593. So I'm going to take 593 and I'm going to divide it by the biggest number that goes into it that's out of my list, and it's 125. So there we go. I'm going to divide it, and I got a 4. So I'm going to put my 4, and I'll do it in black just to help us out. So I'm going to put that 4 down here. Okay. Now I've got what left over? I've got my 93 left over. So that is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to take the 93, and this time I've already divided by my 125. Okay, so the next one is 25. So I'm divided by 25, and I get 3. So I've done that. What do I have left over? 18. So that goes underneath my little house. And I'm going to then divide that by 5 because that's our next number right there. So I divide it by 5. And I have 3 left over. And again, you can just go straight down and put, okay, that's 3. That's my unit. Okay. Or you can do that little division. 3 divided by 1 is 3. All right. So 100 and, okay, so this one, let's see. So the next, whoops, sorry. Okay, so now we've got 147. Once again, 125 is our man, so we're going to divide 147 by 125. And that gives us our 1. So that's my 1 here. I'll put the 1. Okay, I've got 22 left over. That's my remainder. So I do another division. Okay, and this one I check off. Done. So my next division is I've got 22. Notice I have 22. 25 doesn't go into 22. Okay, so that one doesn't work. So I put a 0 in that spot. Okay, I still take the 22. Okay, but this time, what am I dividing it by? I'm going to be dividing it by the next one up, which is that 5, right? So I take 22 and I divide it by 5 and I get 4. So that one does work. And then again, you have the option as your teacher, when you're a teacher, that you can just say, write it down as 2, or if you want to do the 2 divided by 2. And so that's your answer. Okay, last one, and then we'll stop this video and do one more. All right, so 487, once again, it's too big. The next, for 5 to the 4th, so we're going to divide by our smallest number that we, or our largest number we got, which is 125. So we can divide, and let's see what we get. Oops. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so we know that we're going to have, we know we're going to have 4 numbers. So we're going to take that and divide. And once again, we divided by 125, and we were left with 3. So I'm going to write 3 down there, and check that guy off. So we've got 112 left over, and we're going to go up to the next one and divide. So we're going to look at dividing it by 25. So that's next. We divide it by 25. We got 4. Notice what we have left over. We got 12. So that goes under the house. That's the next thing that we're going to divide by. So we divide it by 5, and it goes in there 2. So now we've done that one. And we have a 2 left over. So again, you could just write 2 down, or you can do 2 divided by 1 is 2. Okay, so again, if you need more practice doing this, okay, you can go back and you've got an extra worksheet and you've got an extra video. Knock yourself out. Y'all need to practice these things, okay? Got one more video and we'll be done with this section.